Okay, I'm going to discuss two really important plants for the Quino checker spot caterpillar, Castilleja exserta and Castilleja densiflora. These Castilleja are critical food for this caterpillar and other Euphradyas editha subspecies. Castilleja exserta has numerous common names, including purple owl's clover, and exerted Indian paintbrush. But for this study, we're just going to use the scientific name Castilleja exserta. Castilleja densiflora has many common names, including dense flower Indian paintbrush, dense flower owl's clover, and owl's clover. This is why common names are kind of confusing. Now, if we compare this to Plantago erecta, which is another critical food for the Quino checker spot caterpillar, this plant's interesting because it's a long-term food for Quino. It stays around for a long time and continues to bloom. So the Quino butterfly can come over and continue laying eggs on this flower once Plantago erecta is completely dried up. Another super interesting thing about this plant is it's a hemiparasite, meaning it's a parasite and it's also photosynthesizing at the same time, versus a holoparasite, which doesn't ever use any sunlight. It doesn't photosynthesize. It just utilizes fungus. So really fascinating about this plant. Okay, now let's compare and contrast these important characteristics. Let's start with the leaf, okay? On Castilleja densiflora, there's an entire leaf, meaning you don't see any divisions. You just see that there's an entire edge on the leaf, and it's just one leaf. Okay, now let's compare Castilleja exserta. See how it has all these divisions in the leaf? It's not entire. This is a basal leaf and this is a basal leaf. So this is one way that you can compare this plant and identify it in the field. Another interesting thing about these species is from a distance, you can actually see that Castilleja exserta, it just looks a lot bigger in general, and it has a lot more flowers. Every time I've ever seen it, it's just loaded with flowers. And densiflora has a lot of flowers, but not as many as exserta. So you may start to understand that characteristic over time, seeing a ton of them. So another characteristic you can tell is about the hood or galea. So let's look at exserta first. Do you see that hood? That's this part of the flower at the top, or galea. And that has so many hairs on exserta that it's actually considered bearded. So do you guys see all of those hairs on there? I'm focusing it. Okay, and then the other thing is the top of the galea or hood is hooked. So do you see how that hooks? My flower down below really represents that hook. So again, lots of hairs. It's bearded. Castilleja densiflora. Let's look closer at that hood or galea. See how there's no hairs or few hairs, and it's basically it just term it erect in the key, that hood or galea, that top part of the flower. So again, hardly any hairs, not hooked whatsoever in Castilleja densiflora. So those are two important differences that you can see in the plants, and those are described in the keys. The Jepson key and also Munns or Beecham is where you can key out this plant. Also, kind of interesting, I've noticed just being in the field and seeing both of these plants a lot, I noticed that Castilleja densiflora is in wetter areas, like by vernal pools. It's always in like kind of mesic meadows and on mesic hillsides. So just anywhere where if there was a heavy rain, your foot would get wet. Castilleja exserta, on the other hand, seems to be in drier areas. It's not always around vernal pools. And you can kind of just see the differences of the plants overall. Just look at all of these leaves and how divided these leaves are on Castilleja exserta. There's just so many divisions. That's a key characteristic too in Beecham that you might notice. And then here, the leaves are still divided, but not as much as Castilleja exserta. Okay, I hope this helps you tell the difference between these two Castilleja species. Thank you.